Hello, hello. This is Fake the Nation, where we talk about news, we talk about culture, and where we learn new terms like man-keeping and mermaiding and claw gripping. And we're going to talk about all of those today. We'll also talk about new rules on religion at work, and we'll ask if you're doing your Christmas shopping in July. Today, I have such a wonderful panel collected for you today. Oh my God, this panel. First of all, you've heard him on the show before. You love him on the show. He's a wonderful comedian who I've had the pleasure of seeing perform live, and I hope you do too. He's also host of the Downside podcast. He is the wonderful Gianmarco Soresi. Hey, Gianmarco.
Hello. Happy to be here.
We are also joined for the first time. I'm so delighted to have him because he's so fancy. He's had best-selling books, and he's also the national affairs correspondent for The Nation. He is the wonderful John Nichols. Hi, John.
I am so honored to be in this esteemed company.
So happy to have you here. And before we get into the show, just a quick reminder that if you want to support what we're doing here at Fake the Nation, you can go to patreon.com/Negin Farsad. And for as little as $4 a month, you get bonus episodes of the pod. There's more tiers beyond that with more free stuff. For as little as $1 a month, you get to support the show and get nothing for it in exchange, just the knowledge of supporting the show. So that's also an option for you. So go to patreon.com/Negin Farsad. And thank you so much to all the Fake the Nationers who have already done that. My cup runneth over. And now let's get into it with topic number one. Mermaiding has taken hold, namely in Washington, D.C. right now, and it is exactly what you think it is. It's people dressed as mermaids swimming together and taking shelfies. Yeah, that's right, I said shelfies. Have either of you heard of mermaiding? And Gianmarco, I don't know why, but I feel like between the three of us, you would be most likely to have heard of mermaiding.
Now, why would you say that exactly? I don't know if I appreciate that. I have not heard of this. I was on board until I heard the shelfies part of it. I'm all for people. Listen, we all need some escapism. I felt weird saying it. Mm-hmm. We need some escapism right now. Clearly, the swamp's not going anywhere. We might as well swim in it, you know? So
hey.
I'm happy for people to embrace whatever they need to do to get through living around there right now.
John, you're like a man of magazines and letters, and you are an observer of human life. Is it strange to you that this is a trend? It's literally, and just so we're clear, people spend lots of money on buying really beautiful, shiny, colorful mermaid outfits, and they go into pools and they swim together and they take pictures, and it's a kaleidoscope of color, and it's fantastical, it's play oriented, but it's adults doing it. John, is this something that's surprising to you? Have you seen other moments of this in American life?
Yeah, I've been to Walt Disney World. And I have seen adults with mouse ears and some reasonable effort to approximate Disney characters, and so this is just add water, right? And I think I'm definitely with my comrade here. Whatever gets you through these times is commendable. B, I guess I have a daughter who is this age as me, but I have a daughter who is coming into her 20s, and so I have just spent 2 decades around a lot of costumes and around a lot of outfits. And interestingly enough, I see it brings, at least it's brought a lot of young people a lot of joy, right, to dress up. I mean, Halloween's the biggest holiday in our house. And so I actually think that we live in an era where I think a lot of adults are saying, what does bring me joy? What did bring me joy when I was a kid? What does maybe as an adult do the same? And so, yeah, you want to go mermaiding? I'm afraid I may not be with you in the pool, but boy, I'm sure not going to judge you.
I love that attitude because I do feel a little curmudgeonly when I first read this thing. I was just like, oh, mermaiding, why? And I think part of it is, I don't know, Gianmarco, if you're like me, I don't know, as a comedian, I'm kind of like many nights of the week I go on a stage and I say a bunch of stuff and I disassociate from my personal core self in order to communicate with large scale audiences. And so maybe I don't need costumes really. And I don't know, so maybe it's the comedian in me that's curmudgeonly.
I think that is the kind of self-awareness that we do have to possess. I had a friend, he was in a Broadway show, and he was complaining about someone being like too like performative in public, and I was like, you get to do it 8 times a week.
Yeah.
This is all they have.
right.
You know, I do think sometimes I see like the big dress up, and I'm like, you can dress up more like in your regular day life. You don't need to like save it all for the pool. But again, it's fine as long as you're not like taking up the pool, as long as you're doing it safe. It's hard. You know, we're not a mermaid, and the last thing I want a kid to see is, a drowned mermaid. That's going to really, you know, they're going to go, well, that doesn't make sense. They're a fish.
So
as long as you stay
dark
safe.
place, brother. Yeah.
Well, listen, that tail, it's hard. I just...
So this is the thing that we failed to explore, and I feel like we may be really kind of off mark here. Is there like a significant amount of athleticism involved in this? Is it
No.
Have you ever
possible
put a
that
tail
people
on?
who-
Those abs?
Well,
You're
but
doing
I
a
don't know.
butterfly.
Does it require, skills that maybe we're all sitting around talking about it, not knowing anything, speaking from deep ignorance, when we're really discussing something that actually involves some skills?
Okay, in all fairness, there are what I'm going to go ahead and say professional mermaids who are
course.
in troops where they go and perform at different Ren fairs. Okay, so like there's a part of it that there is like some professional performance involved. I also just want to say, as Gianmarco talked about, like maybe you should do some more of the dress up in your regular life. You don't have to save it all for these one moments. As someone who's now sitting on this camera, and if you're watching on YouTube, you know exactly what I'm talking about, with like a giant bow on my head. I think I do spread out my theatricality in the costume sense.
We can't even see the
throughout my
tail
everyday.
underneath the screen.
Yeah, well, there's also, it goes above the screen there, too.
Exactly. That's how tall this bow is. Okay, go ahead.
I will tell you, I'm from Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, and we have a place in Wisconsin called Wisconsin Dells. And
Oh, yeah.
It's America's greatest water park center. For years, when I was a child, there was the Tommy Bartlett Water Show that was a lot of adults doing all sorts of wild things on water, right? You know, like 12 people standing on each other's shoulders, water skiing across lakes and things of that nature. And so I somehow believe, I believe, unfortunately, Tommy Bartlett has passed, but my sense is that the Tommy Bartlett Water Show could easily have incorporated mermaids. And in fact, we're in a nascent state of this discussion, but having grown up around the world's greatest water park center, I think 5 years from now we'll look back on this and say, man, we were talking about the future, and the future, this mermaiding
mermaids.
future. Yeah.
We are all Merpeople. Okay, let us move on. By the way, if anyone is listening from Wisconsin and agrees with the phrase the Wisconsin Dells is the best water park in the world, please let me know. Or is that just some shenanigans that John Nichols is just spewing from
This
his
is
mouth?
real.
All right. Let's move on to another point in culture from this week. There's a new TikTok trend where women are showing off their claw grip, which is to say they are showing off how many things they can hold in one hand. Now, I'm a mom, so I guess I've been doing the claw grip without talking about it or naming it or making videos about it for very many years now. But I guess, have you noticed women naturally do this? Has it been something that's come across your radars, the claw grip?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, my girlfriend does it, but to me, listen, I carry things too. I would have filmed her doing it, but I got crap in my hands too.
I don't know if that's true.
I understand. I understand that it probably is because there's not a lot of pockets going on. So I guess I can understand that. Whereas, as opposed to it being like women be like this, women be clawing, it's more like, well, women clothes be not pocketing. And I go, okay, that's a problem.
It's a problem. And it's funny because it's not the first time that pocketless garments have been discussed on this show, because it is a thing that has upset women from the beginning of modern dress. John Nichols, now you said you have a daughter. Look, by the way, you look like your daughter would just be entering middle school. That's how young of a man
you're
you
so
look.
sweet, but my
Now,
daughter is well beyond.
She's well beyond. Have you seen her or any one other woman in your life claw gripping? And is it something that ever has like struck you as odd or noticeable?
Well, look, we live in a diverse world with people who come from many different places. And so I will put up front that my daughter has decided to go through life without ever having to hold anything.
Oh, shit. That's
She is
interesting.
Really smart and interesting. And I know people like her, people who like travel to another city on a plane and want to get off with only their cell phone, right? And not have to carry anything. My daughter is of that culture. And since she was a little kid, if you give her something, she says, oh, this is great. And she hands it off to you, right?
Right.
And just keeps moving through life. So I want to emphasize, there are people like that. On the other hand, I live in a neighborhood with a lot of young moms. And it happens that I have usually worked from home. And so I have an office, and my door is open. And many of the young moms and folks, and young dads from the neighborhood stop by. I have one acquaintance who has 2 kids, both of whom are on some sort of, scooter type thing, a dog, a stroller for the kid who may decide not to do the scooter, and a huge number of items, drinks and stuff like that. I don't think I have ever seen her without 5 things in her hand while pushing the stroller. And so what I would tell you is, I think this is a unique strength that is developed by certain people. I have no doubt that there are men who can and have developed these skills. And I think we call them, often carpenters, or, there are many people in the trade who really can
not
manage
comedians,
a lot of stuff at
Gianmarco.
once.
Yeah, but let me make something clear.
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of cargo shorts, and you know who had a
Yes.
problem with them? My girlfriend. So
they're ugly.
maybe this is a self-inflicted problem of not appreciating the aesthetic of pockets, because I've had to learn the claw because I had to throw out all my cargo shorts.
Wow.
So I just
Yeah.
got to say, let's, it might be a problem that has been self-created. Let's add those. I want cargo dresses, cargo shorts, cargo pants. I'm all for it.
Can I say something? I feel like this is a safe group to share with you guys a truth about myself, which is that, like, on weekends when I feel like I'm not going to run into people because I'm, like, doing something parenty on the beach or whatever, I will use sometimes a fanny pack in the God-given way of putting it around my waist. And I'm not unashamed, but like I am tired of putting shit on my shoulders, and I wish I had more pockets, and so then I resort to the fanny pack.
Lose
John,
the claw,
you look
gain
so.
the
John
pouch.
looks so. You lose the claw, gain the pouch. Yeah, John looks so disappointed, but that's the truth. Like that's a truth.
Again, I respect every culture and faith tradition, and so I'm certainly not going to mess with that. But I will suggest to you that I'm willing to put my shoulder out for the knapsack, and I will also tell you, just as an example of this, because we've talked about my daughter so much, and she's a remarkable kid. For like the first 18 months of her life or longer, I carried her everywhere, which was a delight and all sorts of fun things. Then we went to a play group once, and I realized that all the other kids her age could walk, and she couldn't, because I'd been carrying her everywhere. And I immediately started holding her hand. She was walking in a day. But what I would suggest to you is that we get into habits of carrying things.
Yeah, but we don't necessarily need them.
That's the deal. I think your kid, don't leave your kid behind. But on balance, what I would suggest to you is that we have an awful lot of stuff that we think we got to have that we probably don't. And if we get to the level that, there's a pile of this stuff and it's more than you can carry in your hand, I'm just going to say, go for the knapsack.
Go for the all right.
Fanny pack, yeah.
Go. Okay, so John is on knapsack. Gianmarco is on what you call it, a pouch.
Pouch, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm embracing the old school term fanny pack, the most embarrassing of the terms. All right, let us actually move on. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about politics. And we are back, and we're ready for topic number 2. Okay, so I just wanted to take a minute here and mention the shooting in New York City. 6 people died because a shooter decided to drive from Nevada to New York to kill innocent people, including himself. I guess his intended target were the NFL offices in this building on Park Avenue. And a bunch of innocent people died, including a cop who was trying to heroically help the scene, who was, I should also note, a Bangladeshi immigrant. We'd like to mention when people are immigrants and criminals. I also would like to mention when people are immigrants and total heroes. I don't know. So I live in New York. I know Gianmarco lives in New York. John, I actually don't know where you're calling us from. Where are you calling us from?
I'm in New York today.
Oh, you're in New York.
And,
okay.
So we're probably blocks away from each other and could be in the same room. But often I'm in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, got you. So I think, I don't know, Gianmarco, when I was hearing about this, I was trying to think of like the last time this kind of thing happened in New York City. And I think one of the things that's actually really stunning is that we don't really have this kind of thing in New York City. Do you have any just general thoughts you want to share about what happened?
New York, it makes New York feel a lot smaller. The last time I can remember was to bring up more tragic things, the guy who drove the car in Times Square. And I just think about, we do a lot of commuting within Manhattan. And so all these areas, it's like we've been very close to. Mm-hmm. And, we're a close-knit city, so anything that happens, even in one part of Manhattan, you really do feel like I could have been there. Yeah. And it makes you just understand how fragile things can be. It was, yeah.
I should mention, I worked in that building. It was like my first job in the city.
Really?
Was in that building. So, which means nothing, but just that I could totally picture the whole scene. John, on the political front and how it's being covered in the media, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, we've been through these shootings before as a country.
We have, and I think the greatest challenge that we have as a country is to distinguish them, to recognize that we are never served by suggesting that there is, that it's all the same, that it's always come from the same place. The one constant that, from a political standpoint, we should be conscious of is the fact that it's a gun, right? And we recently in Michigan had a stabbing incident, so that can happen, but overwhelmingly it's guns. And guns give people the capacity, wherever they're coming from, whatever their motivation, to harm a lot of people very rapidly. And so at the risk of being too political about this, I think this draws us to a discussion about whether there's a better society in which no matter what's motivating somebody someday, no matter what's throwing them off, no matter what has made them, put them in a place where they really feel horribly or even violently toward other people, that they can't play that out at a level that sees the carnage that you saw just in the last couple days in New York. And the one other thing I do think is interesting, New York is an amazing city. I'm not a native New Yorker, but New York absorbs a lot. This is a city that takes in, a lot of excitement, thrills, wonder, but also trauma and difficulty. And the only thing I would emphasize is that this shooting occurred right around the corner from TV studios and in the heart of Manhattan. And I will just tell you that sometimes there are a lot of shootings, often in other places, in other parts of the city and in other circumstances. And when we look at the whole of a gun culture, what we realize is that it can be a very, very overwhelming thing for a city. New York has been, as I think you both know, less violent recently, a lot less violent in recent years. And so this does stand out, but at the same time I would remind people that if you lose someone to gun violence, whether it's in a mass shooting or an individual or a random incident, the trauma is still real. And I think we have a responsibility as human beings to recognize that as an individual and haunting and often life-changing, almost always life-changing event for those involved and those around it. And at the same by the same token, I think we do have a responsibility as human beings to look for ways that we can maybe make sure that
mitigate
other people aren't traumatized and that we don't go to this next stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important point. And really, if like the thing about gun laws is that they work. It's like one of those things that people don't want to I think people on the gun side don't like to mention that, but the reason we don't see a lot of gun violence with assault rifles is because the laws there work. The reason we don't see the same levels of gun violence between a city like Vancouver and a city like Seattle, which are like neighboring cities, is because there are gun laws in Canada, but there aren't in Seattle, right? So the rate of gun violence is higher. I mean, gun laws work. It's really annoying. So I am on the side of gun laws. All right, let us move on to talk about a new Trump administration guidance that was released this week that protects employees and supervisors seeking to recruit coworkers to their religion. Among the things the new guidance protects: wearing religious symbols, adorning your office cubicle with symbols, hosting prayer groups in empty offices, and posting about religious events on office bulletin boards. Now, I don't know. It's been very many years since I worked in an office, apart from some, shorter gigs. I guess in a comedy club, I don't know, Gianmarco, have you ever been solicited to someone's religion? We're, I think, a godless bunch, but I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I would say I'd be solicited to a lack of religion, and I don't necessarily fight that. Yeah, it would definitely. I mean, a comedy club is obviously a different space. I could probably make a joke to their face, but I imagine in the workplace, if you were to engage in that kind of humor, then you'd be in trouble for that. Yeah. So it makes me uncomfortable for sure. I think I get enough of being trying to convert to be a Jehovah's Witness on the way to my jobs on the subway, rather than have to deal with it at work itself.
Right, you're fine with like a pamphlet on a subway, and you're less comfortable with a coworker inviting you to an event. John, you've been in probably more offices than the two of us. What do you think of this? This thing?
I'm afraid the Nation magazine, which I write for, is a relatively secular institution, and that has not given me as much grounding in this discussion as some folks might have. I will tell you that I am a Quaker. I'm a member of the Religious Society of Friends, which is a very small religious tradition, very liberal, very oriented toward peace and justice. It means a lot to me. It's a big part of my life. But interestingly enough, the Quaker tradition, at least in modern times, has not been to proselytize, but rather to hopefully impress people by your behavior. And
that's why there's such a small community.
Yeah, I know, we have really blown it in that regard. But to, acts rather than words, deeds rather than preachments. And so as such, I'm always, that's kind of where I default to. I think that in matters of faith, people, it's such a personal thing, and it's different for different people. And I actually believe that there is plenty of room for discussion of faith. I think it's something we should do a lot more in our society. I really believe that strongly. By the same token, I do default to the biblical line from the Nazarene. In my Father's house there are many mansions. And the concept that there are many ways to get to a relationship with God, or if you choose not to have that relationship, there are many ways to get there. And I, as a result, think that maybe I still hold to the view that that's something that's kind of best done on your own, or in consultation with people you like and know, or maybe even somebody you've met who you think, wow, you seem to have your life together in a wonderful way. Let's talk about that. And I guess it's a long way of saying I kind of like the separation of church and state. And I think that we are, as a society, working very, very hard to erase that separation. And interestingly enough, as a religious person, I hold to the view that that's not necessarily good, because I think that separation of church and state is not only good for, I think, society, so we maybe aren't always arguing with each other, but I think there's also an argument that it's good for faith, that, we don't mingle it as much with our politics and with our governance and maybe even sometimes with our work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can go there was a time, and I actually don't know where the French law is right now. As listeners know, I lived in Paris for a while. It's not a big deal, and I don't mean to brag, but
you look at it.
But I did, and and there was a time when they were really intense about don't wear the hijab to work. Right? Like if you're a federal employee, you can't wear the hijab. And there was a whole thing about that. And that it was almost like taking the separation of church and state too far. And I think there's a place, and by the way, I think of all the things the Trump administration has done, this is probably the most chill of the things, because the weird thing is as much as they're protecting Christians, which is the main goal, we've seen that because Trump created a White House faith office. He also established the Religious Liberty Commission, and these things are really oriented towards supporting Christians. And as much as he's done that, the unwitting thing that he has also done is support Muslims, is support Hindus, is support Quakers or whatever, because they're allowed to now also wear the things, and they'll put the thing on the cubicle or whatever and hold the events in empty office spaces. So it's sort of I don't know. Gianmarco, it sounded like you were saying something.
I'm sure that's what Trump, that's why he put this law. He said, I just want to make sure people feel comfortable wearing the hijab at the federal office. I think no good faith. I mean, speaking of faith, the Trump administration should be given no good faith interpretation, and they'll do this, and then they'll say, well, you can do this, but no coverings that wrap around your ears. They'll do this, and all the people, the majority of the people in the positions of power will be Christians, so it's going to be socially discouraged to not proselytize outside of Christianity. I don't buy it at all. I think you have to be fervent about the separation of church and state. I think I remember as a kid learning about church and state, the separation, and I thought, well, if someone really believes God told them to do something, are they really going to be cool with being like, okay, but not at the office? The urge to break that separation is baked into. It's always around the corner, and the second you loosen things up, it will take over immediately. If people have the permission, those that feel very intense about the one true God, the one true laws, they will take over immediately. And in America, it will not be a multi-denominational thing. It's going to be Christian. And you are going to feel ostracized if you're not a part of it. So I loathe this. I hate it with all my being.
Can I?
Yeah.
Echo
final
that.
word on this, John. Yeah.
Final word echoing. I just think, one of the things I love the most about America is being out in places, unexpected places, and seeing a diversity of religion. Seeing religion that isn't dominant, but is the people love it, and it's a part of them. The first mosque in North America was in North Dakota, in farm country. And I think it's really important to recognize that this country has so many religious traditions, and if we blur that separation of church and state, right? If we really try to eliminate it, as Gianmarco says, we end up in a situation where somebody's going to, effectively, where I fear political forces are going to try and deny that diversity, deny that wonderful, part of what makes this country great is that we have so many religious traditions, and we have traditions of people who do not believe, right? And that all is a part of it. And I dare say that coming off what Gianmarco said, there's an outside chance that as regards Donald Trump and some of those folks, this may even be a slightly cynical endeavor.
It's so diplomatic. Yeah. All right, folks, let me know what you think. Do you hate it with all your being, or do you think it might just be slightly, they might not be earnest, as John would have us feel. All right, and let's quickly talk about this thing with tariffs. There's like a bunch of pieces in, across the news landscape about Christmas in July and people shopping in July, which are at odds with the other set of news pieces that are about the European Union, for example, signing on to a tariff deal that sucks for the European Union. It makes me feel like Donald Trump is sort of failing upwards. John, what did you think about this week's kind of, because the thing about Christmas in July is that, like, people who, civilians spending money are worried about the changing economic landscape, so they're looking for deals early, right? Yep. It's not necessarily like a great sign. And then, of course, we saw this tariff deal announced this week. Mm-hmm. And the other weird thing is, like, all of the tariff brouhaha that was, like, sort of supposed to happen, like this empty shelves and all that stuff, hasn't come to pass, partly because like, Trump chickened out and all that stuff. So I guess, I don't know, where do you think we are with all of our mixed economic messages?
Total chaos.
Okay.
Right. It's not chaos as in people running into the streets or
right.
or something like that. But this is the most chaotic set of messages you could possibly imagine. And Donald Trump has announced tariffs, held them up, cut deals, uncut deals. You guys, we've had kind of tariff arrangements with countries that we then got rid of. Trump said this is where we're going to go. Then he said we're not going to go there. Now we're back. We're going to go there again. And they go up and down. The numbers change. The interesting thing is that we're on the cusp of the moment where supposedly all these tariffs are supposed to kick in. And I don't think who would...
tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the people who cut tariff deals, the people who would be collecting tariffs know what they're supposed to collect or know what they're supposed to deposit. This is a bizarre
so confusing.
Chaos.
It's so confusing.
And amidst that chaos, I actually follow this stuff pretty closely. In fact, I'm sometimes economic commentator, which means I carry my Financial Times wherever I go.
Guys, he's showing it to us. It's
just
true.
To tell you,
it's
this
real.
is sincere. And so this is the bottom line that I think is important to understand. In reading a lot of these publications, and actually the people who kind of know about it, what they'll tell you is that what Trump announced in Europe, there's not a there. They were literally talking about the European Union doing certain things that it can't do. And there are European countries stepping up saying, well, we just heard about this, but we didn't sign on to this, and we don't know how this is going to work. And so what I want to strongly emphasize to you is that Donald Trump loves the word tariff, in which the same way that I love the word riff. I love riffs because I came up in rock and roll, and I really love it when somebody plays well on the guitar. But I can't.
And whenever someone wrongs you, you threaten you're going to do a riff, and it's going to
no,
go
that's
on
what
forever.
You do, bro. Yeah. But I can't play a good riff on the guitar. I just love the word. I'm afraid Donald Trump is very similar to that. I think he loves the word tariff. He thinks it's going to solve everything. It isn't going to do it. And at the end of the day, it may not create empty shelves. In fact, it may create more crowded shelves because things will be more expensive. And as a result, people won't be able to buy things that they need. And so I want to really strongly emphasize, we're in a chaotic moment. What Trump is doing is not appropriate, logical, or frankly good for the U.S. or for people we trade with.
Gianmarco, as the opposite of someone who knows something about economics, what is your position?
Thank you. Is that just based off my bare wall behind me and the quality of the curtain? I would say this. Listen, I certainly know very little. I will say what I do know is messaging for sure, and I would say that what happens with a lot of this stuff is that the messaging is like Trump has already done the thing, and then people go, well, actually, the stocks are up today, and actually, I haven't noticed a price change. And I do think there's gonna, unfortunately, the average American, and I would include myself in there, are not going to understand the consequences of tariffs until they feel it when they're checking out.
Yeah.
And that's when you can point to it. But I think what happens is everyone goes, rightfully so, this is a chaotic strategy. And then the regular Joe goes, well, it seems to be fine. You seem to be overreacting and think you know all these things, and it's not going to happen yet. So the pushback and the people kind of realizing what's happened, it's going to be tough to convince when it is so chaotic, which is part of the Trump strategy, which means anyone trying to overcome the chaos of his messaging and tactics has to do it selectively, lest they look like they're constantly saying the sky is falling.
Don't get on this roller coaster, right? Do not go like, oh, I'm going to follow everything Trump does and try to ride it up and down.
Yes.
And
yes.
Can I just to put an exclamation mark on what Gianmarco said? How many days have we spent talking about tariffs? A lot, right? It's there.
Miserable numbers, yeah.
What does the average person do? Say, oh, wow, this is a very good time to go get something to drink, right? I mean, the American people have not followed this debate closely.
No.
Trump seems to imagine that every time he announces a new tariff win, everybody will be all excited. I will remind you that this week he has hit the lowest approval ratings in his presidency. Again and again and again, poll after poll after poll. So it does not appear that announcing big tariff breakthroughs is having any positive political impact for him. And I also will dare say I don't think it's going to have a long-term economic impact either.
All right, let us move on to topic number 3. Okay. Now, sorry, I lost my place. Here we go. Chip and Joanna Gaines have been in the news of late. They're known for an HGTV TV show called Fixer Upper. They're charming. They're wholesome. They have a new show on HBO where families have to live like they're in the 1800s, and one of the couples is gay. Now, this is an interesting moment because in 2016, BuzzFeed did a hit piece on the couple because they're members of a church that is against same-sex marriage. Now that the shoe is on the other gay foot, the Christian community is none too happy. They're essentially calling to cancel the couple, but for the opposite reason that the original BuzzFeed article called for the cancellation of the couple. And my question to the both of you is, who owns cancel culture right now? It's on both sides. It's everywhere.
Listen, I think the OG cancel culture is Christianity. We cannot pretend that anyone's taken it from them. They're with the concept of hell. They created this from the beginning. I read that article and it was very frustrating, I will say, because it was written by someone who was talking about how they thought the BuzzFeed article was kind of demonizing Christianity as being homophobic, or being like, just because you go to the homophobic church doesn't mean that you're homophobic. And I look, and the author talks about where it leads, which is this right now, and still goes like, well, you shouldn't let it up. Homophobic views should be condemned writ large at all times, because if they are not, it will creep back up the second the person is in power. It always does.
But don't you? I mean, I know I have family members who have a bunch of opinions that I find extraordinarily distasteful, wrong, cruel, dangerous, right? And yet they're still my family, and I don't disassociate from them.
I know, but I don't have to watch your family's TV show.
Okay,
you know,
right.
That's good.
Right,
Listen,
so
I have a problematic family too.
Okay, so you're saying
do.
because they're in a public position, we need to hold them to a different standard. Is that what you're saying? That's a fair argument if that's your point with this kind of...
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like the separation where it's like, yeah, I do think you're certainly allowed to be like annoyed. Why are you going to the homophobic church? And then it's up to them to leave that church or tell their pastor stop expressing homophobic views. I think The problem with, I think, cancel culture, as people talk about it, is the lack of ability for people to grow or change. So, like, if they then left the church, if they denounced the homophobic views, and then you still said, well, you did this once, then I go, you've lost to, ironically, the Christian basis of forgiveness. But I do think that, yeah, look what happens. Now they have had a platform, the platform has grown, and now that Christians are seeing a revitalization of their social powers, they're spreading homophobia again. And I'm not surprised.
John, what do you think?
Well, at the risk of being a historian, there's some evidence that we've had LGBTQ plus people throughout history, right? And society, I think, at our best, has evolved until very recently toward a place of saying, look, this is not just part of reality. It's good. I mean, it is good to have this great diversity of humanity and to have people who can express who they are and what they are. And I think the idea of canceling folks because they're gay or lesbian or whatever, I understand that there are political folks who may still think this gets traction politically, and it may in some sectors. But I really want to emphasize that if you go and speak to a group of young people, whether they're religious or not, whether they're, whatever background they're from, what you hear is an incredible openness and, frankly, a really, a very, in my view, advanced attitude on this. So I think that we're seeing a lot of folks cling to the past, right, to want to, try and hang on to something that simply isn't selling with a rising generation, is it? And help me out on this. The British actor and comedian, is it Alan Cummings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, who was, I hope I'm right about this, was hosting one of the late night co-hosting or coming in and hosting one of the talk shows last night, and spoke at great length about these issues. And the audience was going wild with support for, a much more, for a loving and open and welcoming view. And so I'm glad we're talking about this, but I will have to tell you, I think this is the fringe, not where society is headed. And I will also tell you this, I cover politics for a living. And I watched the Wisconsin Supreme Court race in April, very critical race. $100 million spent, Elon Musk flew in, Trump made an endorsement, and one of the biggest attacks on the liberal candidate was that this liberal candidate was somehow sympathetic to trans people. The liberal candidate in Wisconsin, a battleground state, won a landslide 55-45 win, and won in a lot of rural counties, won in, all over. And I'm just telling you, I honestly think that America is rejecting this attempt to lurch backward. Unfortunately, the people who are in power right now have a lot of power to kind of advance it. But I have to say that I think Gianmarco's view is, at your most hopeful, and I know you don't show that very often, but is in fact where society is headed. And so that's a long way of saying I think we are watching some people who have these debates cling to the past, when in fact the future is one of an embrace and of a hope for humanity.
What a beautiful sentiment to end that on. You guys, that is the end of the show. What a wonderful discussion the three of us had. I mean, I think you guys are fantastic, and I want the people of Fake the Nation to be able to follow you and all the wonderful things that you do. John Nichols, where do they follow you?
I'm doing that Blue Sky thing.
All right.
And so it's Nichols Uprising at Blue Sky, whatever. And I'm having a lot of fun there. It's a pretty interesting community. I'm still on Twitter too, or X or whatever that is. But I'm really doing that. And I also write a lot for The Nation magazine. You can come to the Nation website, www.thenation.com.
And we've read pieces from The Nation and talked about them on this very show, so listeners are familiar with The Nation.
Yeah.
I agree. Gianmarco Soresi, where do people find you?
You can find me, I'm touring all over the world, but find me everywhere online at Gianmarco Soresi, all the platforms, and listen to my podcast, The Downside.
Folks, subscribe to The Downside. What a delightful show. And also see Gianmarco live. It's so fun. And you know where to find me in all things I do. You'll find me on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me next week doing a live taping in Chicago. So if you happen to be in town, come to a live taping of that. It's so fun. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone who makes the show a possibility. That's our wonderful producer, Rob. That is also thanks to Gaby Alter, who wrote our theme music. You can email us at fakethenationpodcast@gmail.com. You can support us at patreon.com/Negin Farsad, and otherwise we'll be back in your earballs next week.